be resourceful in Vietnam. I don't like disorder in my room. Clean it up, Tay.
Sit, yo.
This is my class, Rodriguez.
Just some weld.
Thank you.
You with me, and you will suffer my wrath.
The movie kicks off with Shale and his team wrapping up an operation, only to discover later that it was unauthorized, which means they're off duty now. Once they go their separate ways with Shale heading back home, it goes on with a fantastic view of Miami, then shifts to Jane, who's taking a class at the school. Not long after, a fight breaks out on school grounds, leading to the need for a clever ambush aimed at a student orchestrated by the Co-D. Jane and Mr. Sherman manage to break up the ambush and save the student who was in danger, even though he insisted he didn't need any help. Jane is trying to have a chat with the person who started the whole thing, the ringleader, Juan. With a gentle tone, she encourages him to recognize his potential, urging him to embrace change and reveal the brilliance that's already within him. Juan's reaction to her calm advice is anything but warm. He shuts her down with a cold attitude, refusing to listen and even threatening her if she doesn't back off before storming out. The teachers talk to the school principal about why the COD needs to be looked into and probably expelled. The principal lets them know that there isn't enough evidence of a threat to justify expulsion. Even when she brings up his threat to make her regret confronting him, the principal's views still didn't change. Jane was really upset and decided to walk out on the principal, telling him she would find his proof. As she walks up to her car, she notices the whole gang gathered around it. When she gets to the car door, she sees that the keyhole is all taped up. They poke fun at her while she tries to get the car door open. Juan throws a sign and she mirrors him, but in reverse to throw him off. Fortunately, she hops into the car just in time before the gang can reach her. It doesn't end there. Those rude students throw all kinds of sexual taunts and insults at her in the car as she drives off. When she gets home, she's surprised to find her husband there, and she excitedly runs into his arms. After reconnecting with the man she had missed dearly, they chatted about why he was back instead of being in service. Shale reveals that he's been let go, and they start joking about what he might do next. Shale checks his voicemail and hears a message from one of his team members about a job offer they managed to secure for the group. They chat about the job at a strip club, and Joey manages to talk him into taking the gig. When he meets the client, he also runs into his competitor, John Janis, who would eventually be involved in a plot to take him out. Shale listens to the job briefing and figures out that it involves protecting drugs being transported from the government and rival dealers. He feels bad about the job because it didn't sit right with his morals, even though John Janis went ahead and took it. The next morning, Jane goes for a jog along the beach, and while she's out there, Shale is also on the lookout for her. As she walks by, a member of the COD steps in her way and suddenly breaks her knee. Just when he tries to go further and beat her up, Shale jumps in to help out. He brings her to the hospital, and they start to piece together who might have been behind the attack. Jane is asking him for a little help at school. He chooses to step in as a substitute teacher for his wife. That was after he promised Jane that the COD wouldn't get away with what they did. Shale and his team are getting together to gather info about the school and come up with a plan. He takes on a new identity to keep it under wraps that he was connected to Jane, going by the name Smith. After that, he sends in his application, and before long, he's sitting down for an interview with the principal, Claude Rawl. Shale meets the principal, and Rawl lets him know that he's welcome, but will be on probation for now. Shale, now going by Smith, says he'll do his best to fill in for Jane. After this, Smith walks away, keeping his real intentions tucked away behind that calm facade of his. So, he's managed to sneak into the school, and now he's got the perfect chance to set things right for what happened to his lady. Smith steps into his first classroom and finds himself looking at a bunch of students who seem pretty uninterested and skeptical. It seems like there's a complete lack of organization and decorum going on. He strolls to the front of the room, greets the class, and exudes a sense of confidence. He checks the attendance of these unruly students, who are full of disrespect, but as he goes on, he starts to see the underlying negligence and discomfort among them. During class, all Smith can really do is gather information by listening to their conversations and paying attention to their interactions and details. In the staff room, after a little while, he runs into Mr. Sherman and the librarian, Hannah. They start chatting after they introduce themselves. He picks up everything they know about the KOD, including their violent history and how they control the school. Hannah suggests that the kid could be behind the attack on Jane. She also suggests that the principal could be connected to the KOD. Even though Sherman defended the principal all on his own since he was a cop, Smith chooses to have a chat with Principal Rawl. During the chat with Rawl, he notices some clues that back up the librarian's ideas, like the watch the principal had on. They're both playing mind games, sending little messages back and forth to each other. Rawl wraps up the chat by casually hinting at some power dynamics with Smith. Later, Smith gets together with his team to share a plan about keeping an eye on the school, focusing on what the KOD is up to. So, even though one person wasn't on board, he still manages to sway most of the team for this mission, and they dive right in. The following day, he shows up to class and kicks off his lesson about the history of Vietnam. As he turns to face the board, a student named Tay hurls a crumpled can at him. So, Smith was really paying attention and managed to catch the can. Then, he tossed it right back at Tay's forehead, leaving everyone in the class totally stunned. Tay gets really fired up and confronts him. The rest of the class starts pushing Tay to take Smith down, and eventually, he goes along with it. Smith twists his arm in self-defense, telling him not to litter the room. He also asks Rodriguez, a fellow student who he noticed had an ice pick earlier, to pass it over. Rodriguez is putting on a brave face, but Smith gives his finger a little twist, asking for the weapon. Feeling a lot of pain, he passes the ice pick over to Smith. Smith, wanting to make a point and grab everyone's attention, speaks to the class with a serious tone this time. Tay and Rodriguez head over to the school nurse's office later on. They head over to meet the principal and tell him about Smith. The principal rushes to the classroom and asks Maven, the guard, to join him there as well. When he arrives, he finds a calm classroom full of students who are now focused and engaging with Smith. Principal Rawl decides to hang tight until the class wraps up. In the lesson, Locus, who leads the KOD, tries to throw Smith off by asking if he's been shot. Later, while keeping an eye on the school areas through the cameras that Smith's team had set up, he spots Rawl making his way to the classroom and gets everything ready. The principal chats with him about the lawsuits that some students are thinking of filing. Rawl tells him he needs to apologize or he's going to lose his job. Smith, fully aware that it can't be done without a 2-week notice, requests that the proper procedures be followed. Feeling a bit uneasy about Smith's challenge, he decides to dig into Smith's qualifications with a background check. However, it turns out that a lot of the info he found was misleading and planted by Smith and the team. Smith takes Jane back to her place, and when she spots a letter from some of the students, she just breaks down in tears. Smith is trying to make her feel better, but they end up having a bit of a disagreement. The next day, Smith shows up to class and starts teaching, and then Juan Locus strolls in late with his crew. Smith calls out Juan for being late, and Juan shoots back, asking if Smith would like it if he wrote, "Sorry," on the blackboard 10 times. Smith then decides to make it 100 times instead. Since Juan knows he can't ignore a teacher without getting into trouble, he starts writing after giving Smith a hard time. Smith uses Jerome's name to kick off an engaging class, which quickly sparks some deep conversations about their future, helping them confront reality and take things more seriously. Once class wrapped up, Rawl caught up with Smith to give him a nod for dealing with Locus without any force. He also asks Smith to meet him at a certain time. Right after this, Rawl catches up with Juan Locus to plan a hit on Smith. Fortunately, Smith was able to spot them on the camera. So, when the moment arrived, Juan and a few others were all set to ambush Smith, who was totally ready for it all. He's hanging out in the library wearing his bulletproof vest, just waiting for Juan and his crew, along with a few armed guards that Rawl sent over. He flips the tables to gain the upper hand, and then a confrontation kicks off, during which Smith ends up getting shot. So, at the end of it all, Rawl thought they had taken care of Smith and tossed his body out of the library. But in a twist, Smith actually ends up throwing each of them out the window instead. As Rawl is heading out, he runs into Smith. To his surprise, Smith just acts like everything's normal and asks what he wanted to talk about. To keep things low-key, Rawl mentions that it's too late, and Smith goes along with it. So Mr. Sherman stops by to hang out with Jane for a bit. Sherman figures out that Shale is actually Smith by piecing things together. Joey keeps an eye on where Juan Locus is going and sends a quick message to Smith about what he's up to, then goes right back to following Juan. So, Smith finally makes it home, and after a bit of back and forth, Jane decides to call him out on his fake name and what he's really up to with the school, based on what she heard from Sherman. Smith talks about how Raul could be involved with the COD, and what's even more important is his dedication to returning the school to the kids. The team is still keeping an eye on the Chaod's movements, and before long, Joey gives Smith a call to let him know he needs to get there. He heads out to meet for a big drug deal. Smith and Joey are watching the Ka duo seal the drug deal. They strike at just the right moment, with Smith handling the COD and Joey dealing with the buyers on the boat. Suddenly, the teammate who was against the plan before turns to Bull and asks him to really go after Smith. They go back and forth for a bit until Smith lands a knockout punch. So, the teammate jumps in to help wrap things up with Bull. They grab the cash and toss the drugs into the ocean. So, in the morning, Raul catches the news about this drug bust on TV, and not long after, he gets a call from the drug lord. The guy's threatening to hurt him if he doesn't come up with the lost money. Raul rushes to school to talk to Juan, but he quickly finds out who's behind it all when Smith reveals that the money has been used for facilities and free pizza for the students. The students also become friendly with Smith and Sherman. Sherman reaches out for help, and Smith shares that Raul could be mixed up in this, but it seems like Sherman's judgment is a bit off. Raul tells the drug lord that he's aware of where the money ended up. Later that night, someone tries to take Smith's life, and Sherman gets dragged into Tala's business, which leads to his death. But there was a student around who saw everything happen. Raul was taken aback when Smith showed up at school the next morning, very much alive, despite the news he had shared about Smith's death. So, there's this back and forth happening between the two sides. Smith goes up against Mr. Wilson, while the COD decides to take a swing at Jane's house. Luckily, Smith and the others just manage to get away. It all builds up to a big showdown at the school, where Smith's team faces off against the COD. Even though a few lives were lost and some classrooms were damaged, they were able to defeat the COD and bring the school back to the students, with Smith and Joey as the only survivors.